Hey everyone, Scott here with Forever Armed. Today in M92 upgrades we're going to take a look at replacing the standard wood furniture here on the forearm with a new polymer forearm made by Manticore Arms called the Renegade. So first we'll take a look at the Renegade and then we'll go through the installation process. Alright, so here's the box it comes in, so we'll take a look at what's going on inside here. Alright, so this is pretty much how it comes. You get an invoice with it and the actual forearm itself. And here it is. It does not come with any instructions, so either you're on your own or you're watching this video. Okay, so here's a look at some of the tools you may need for this installation, and the tools you use may vary. I've got a couple of different pliers here. I've got a file, which you may need or may not need. I've got a 1/8 inch punch, a hammer, and a flathead screwdriver. So the first thing we're going to do here before we get started, of course, is we are going to unload this gun. Okay, now with the gun safely unloaded, we're going to get started here. First thing you're going to do is open up the dust cover here. I'm going to remove the recoil spring and the bolt carrier. Right, and set them aside. Right. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to remove the gas tube here. You may need to push on this button here. It's a little bit. It can be a little stiff once in a while to remove. Just give it a few taps. Back that up. Now this should slide right out. All right, just like that. Now we're not going to be using this top wood piece anymore, so we're going to get that out of there now too. So just going to grab some pliers of some sort and put that on here like that, and then you're just going to turn this wood. This wood will turn and rotate like that to the opposite direction that it was. Okay, now it should just slide off. Takes a little bit of work to do. Might want to put like a screwdriver underneath it to help pry it up a little bit on each end. And now that should come right off. Okay. Okay. So there's your gas tube. You're going to keep that. This piece you're going to set off to the side. Okay. Now we're going to remove the lower wood fore end here. This can be a little tricky. There's a little lever right here, if I can get that on camera. A little lever right here that needs to be moved up. Okay. Now that lever is going to be pretty tight usually, so I am going to bring this gun out onto my vise to get that removed, so I can tap that lever while it's locked under a vise. Okay, so I've got the M92 locked down in a vise, and I've got this rag around it so it doesn't scratch the gun all up. What we're trying to do here, again, is to remove this wood forearm right here, and that's being held in place right now by this lower forearm retainer right here. And there's a little lever right here that needs to be moved so that this will come loose. So this lever is very tight, so that's why I'm using a punch and a hammer to get it moved into position here. Okay, now that that's loose, we can take it out of the vise. Okay, so now with this lower forearm collar lever moved to the rear, we can slide this collar forward. Now this might be a little difficult on yours, it might be stiff. And then this wood will remove. Now this wood is jammed up in the receiver here pretty tight, so it may not just come out real easy. So I'm just going to, by hanging on to it here, I'm just going to pound it down on this table to remove it. Don't worry, you're not going to break anything. It's an AK. Now, as you can see here, it's pulled out of here. Now I can just remove this wood. It's going to be a little tight, but it does come out. just like that. Okay, we no longer need this, so we can set this aside. Okay, so now with the lower wooden fore end removed, we now need to remove this rear collar of the fore end right here, right? And for that, I'm just going to use a flathead screwdriver. This is pretty much just kind of pressed into place. There's a couple of lips down inside here that hold it in place. So if you just take a screwdriver here and put that under there, and you can kind of pry that up. Just do it a little bit on each side until it comes loose. And then just kind of stick the screwdriver in and just kind of give it a little bit of a twist to pull each side up here. Just like that. So now that is loose. And we will not need this anymore, so you can set that to the side. Okay, now that is it for removing parts. Now we can look at installing the new fore end. Okay, so now we've got the new forearm here. One thing I want to mention is when you're putting this on and you're tightening this lever back down on this front retainer here, what happens when you tighten that lever forward is it takes this retainer and pushes it that way to tighten and put pressure on here to hold this in place nice and tight. Now on mine, I found this forearm was a little bit too long. As I'm bringing this lever forward and it's moving this retainer that way, there was not enough space. I could not get this lever all the way forward. So I had to shorten the length of this forearm just a little bit. And how that's done is I used a file and I filed down this front part right here. Not the whole front, just the part where this front retainer is going to be on. I didn't file a whole lot down. It was maybe about 1/32 of an inch. So if you're going to be doing this installation, go ahead and put it on, and if it goes on, that's fine. That's great. If not, you may need to shorten this up just a little bit, and I recommend you to only file a little bit at a time. Try it. If you can't get it on, file a little bit more down, but don't over-file it. If you file too much of this down, it's going to end up being wobbly and loose on here, and you don't want that. So, for the sake of this video, I've already filed this down because I've already installed this before. So, first thing you want to do when you're putting this on is put it on in the front first, and then the front and the rear, and then just slide it down. Now, there's going to be a little bit of a gap here. You don't want that. You want that all the way tightened in place. So, what you're going to want to do here is probably hammer this back so that this is seated all the way into the receiver. So I'm just going to grab a rag here and a hammer. I'm just going to wrap this rag around the front here so I don't damage everything. And I'm just going to tap the front of this retainer here so that it bumps the forearm back into the receiver like where it should be. You don't have to do it. You don't have to do it a lot. Just a little bit. There should be no gap at all right here. Okay, so just tap it in there, and now I've got no gap. So now what we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and move this lever up in place. Now it's going to be very tight to do. You should be able to move it up at least a little bit with your hands, okay, just to get it in place. You may also want to use some sort of pliers, like a needle nose, to help you get that in place a little bit better. Okay, I was able to move it even a little bit further with that. To finish this now, I'm going to bring this back out onto the vise in the garage with the punch and hammer, and I'm going to push that lever all the way forward with a punch and a hammer again. Okay, I've got the M92 back out in the vise, and so now I'm going to go ahead and with my punch and hammer and tap that forearm retainer lever back in its forward position. Alright, now with the Renegade actually installed here, we can go ahead and start putting the gun back together. So first thing we're going to do is reinstall the gas tube here. You may need to pound this in place just a little bit if it doesn't go in initially. Okay, and then we'll go ahead and reinstall the bolt carrier. And the recoil spring. And dust cover back on. And that concludes the installation. Now, as you can see here, the top is open. You can see the gas tube here. Manticore Arms is going to be coming out with a cover that goes over the top of this with different optic sights that you can mount on here. So right now, as you can see, that's open. In a couple of weeks here, they're going to be coming out with like I said, a cover that goes over the top of this with various options for mounting different types of optics. I'll be putting an aim point micro T1 on here. Alright guys, so there you have it. Installation of the Manticore Arms Renegade Forearm. Couple things to note once again, when you're putting this forearm on, make sure that it is seated all the way into the receiver. There should be no gap in between here. And again, you may need to sand down or file down the front end of the forearm just a little bit to get this front retainer to go on all the way. Like I said, don't sand it down too much, otherwise you're going to have some wiggle room in this forearm, and you don't want that. You want it nice and tight. So that's pretty much it. I hope you found this installation video helpful, since there are no instructions that come with it. Once again, please like and share this video. Please subscribe to my channel. This is Scott with Forever Armed, reminding you to be ready for the moment. You must train for the moment.